Alright, so it is time for Fairy Tale chapter something, something, something.
Something, something, something.
It's 427, but, chapter 1 shot.
Oh yeah, chapter 1 shot.
Mm-hmm.
So,
What do we
yeah,
say about this freaking chapter?
well, for one thing, the Natsu one-shotting people is getting old fast.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I didn't expect, these characters to be able to stand up to Natsu because Natsu's supposedly gotten a huge power up.
Mm-hmm.
But is it really necessary for him for him to just outright one-shot them like that? Like they could have at least, taken at least one or two of his hits before, one or two more hits before being taken out.
Mm-hmm.
But they just got Shrek'd so hard that their friggin' like great grandparents felt it. Were
Yeah.
probably like feeling Shrek'd, like, and not to mention all this friggin' time travel issues
Yeah.
that are because all of this stuff's happening, but unfortunately, because of the circumstances of the fact that this is, is to bring Gray back to the good side so he won't kill Frosh, which in turn will not create an evil rogue, makes us have to think back to the Grand Magic Games, which we don't want to.
No.
But we have to, because it's that whole thing about, the time travel and, okay, well, what exactly did happen in Future Rogue's timeline and what exactly didn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for instance, one thing that I actually didn't even think about after Gray was revealed to be the one that kills Frosh was that if you notice in the whole thing with Future Rogue, not once does Future Rogue make any attempt to look at Gray with any different type of look or even try and kill him personally.
Mm-hmm.
Now you could make the claim, oh well, he at that point he was evil and power hungry, so he didn't really want to kill Gray because then that would change the future, so he would never come into power or something like that. But in all essence, his evil stems from the fact that Gray killed his cat, and based on what Sting did gave up the games because of the fact that his cat was given back to him. It shouldn't be too far stretched that Rogue would be like, okay, I'm gonna kill you, Gray, and now my cat won't die, which he technically did.
Mm-hmm.
And it took her Ultir at least a couple of minutes before she was activated the spell to reverse time.
Yep.
It took her 2 minutes to activate the spell because then it only went back 2 minutes. But in that amount of time, the timeline should have changed to it never happening, which then Future Rogue should have disappeared because he wouldn't have existed. His evilness wouldn't have existed. So,
Well, we could get into all the different theories of time travel, but let's not go there.
well, I'm just trying to like go base you have to base it off what they set as their rules. Like, as soon as the eclipse was destroyed, everything started changing.
Mm-hmm.
So, by that logic, that means things that happen in the fairy tales timeline, time travel logic, should immediately affect the timeline, and they work on one linear timeline.
Uh-huh.
Now, this also begs the question about whether or not in the timeline with the whole thing with the dragons. I'm assuming since the timeline from Future Rogue came from the dragons took over.
Yeah.
Then that means Tartarus would have never happened, because people were complaining, oh, well, how come he didn't say anything about Tartarus? Well, that's because in his timeline, Tartarus never happened because the dragons took over.
Mm-hmm.
So, for all you people out there saying, complaining about that, yeah. Now, Natsu not saying anything about to anybody, I do feel like that was dumb.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the fact that Future Rogue went through all he did, and the fact that he came from the future, and then fully believed in the fact that he came from the future, I'm pretty sure he wouldn't just say, even if I know, no one wants to doubt. I'm sure he didn't want to doubt Gray and say, "Oh my God, I can't believe Gray would do it," and look differently at him and judge him. But if the guy from the future tells you he did this, then he's gonna do it.
Yeah.
Obviously, Natsu's not gonna say, "Oh, okay, let's kill Gray to prevent it from happening." No, he'll warn Gray that this is gonna happen,
Mm-hmm.
and warn the other people about it. Like say, "Hey, look, Sting, Rogue, this is what's gonna happen." That I was told, but no, Natsu was being an asshole and decided to keep it to himself. Like, I'm pretty sure, even that's something you should have even told. Like, if Juvia would have been able to probably done something if she would have known that Gray something was going to happen to Gray that might cause him to kill Frosh.
Uh-huh.
So it's just so many things that could have been prevented if Natsu would have just said something.
Yeah.
But then again, certain things have to happen in order for there to be conflict.
Mm-hmm. So on to the chapter itself.
Well, there wasn't much. I mean,
no, there's a lot of one-shotting, but I like the best part about the chapter was Virgo.
Oh my God!
Being tied up when she was summoned.
That was hilarious.
I got bored, so I punished myself.
The only thing that was more hilarious than her entrance was the fact that she was fangirling over the one guy whose magic involved punishment.
Uh-huh.
It's like, oh! Yeah. Or how about the joke they made about how, since Virgo and Lucy were digging the tunnel, they were getting out of the hole first, and they made the whole joke about, Natsu, if you look up, you can see Lucy's panties. Ha 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 ha. So, it'll be. But like I said, 3 people just quickly got knocked out, and Gray shows up. Well, first of all, they had an amazing plan. Let's infiltrate stealthily. First thing Natsu does when he gets out of the hole, screams at the top of his lungs.
Yep.
So, and it's seeming, and then of course at the end, and then at the end of the chapter, Gray comes out, and Gray versus Natsu is seemingly going to start in the next chapter.
Yeah.
But fair in the fact that he's right directly there, I would hope.
Same.
I mean, unless the other thing that they could do is, have some of the other members show up to fight, try and fight, instead of Gray, which I could easily see happening. But there's also the fact that what's going to happen when Gajeel and the Magic Councils, break into the compound.
Uh-huh.
So, but based on the fact that we had these one-shots, I could see this being thankfully. I mean, it's disappointing, but at the same time, I'm glad that they're not going to drag out to some like super long arc.
Mm-hmm.
But it's at the same time, it's when you have something that's like, oh, Avatar, this big threat, get taken out quickly, it just seems disappointing and underwhelming.
Yeah.
But at least based on the numbers, 8 in this chapter, 8 was reduced down to 5. And currently, we have Panther Lily, Gajeel, Lucy, and Natsu. That's 4. Now, according to what we learned in the last chapter, one of the 5 members of Avatar is a spy. Now, it's presumed to not be Gray based on, his mannerisms.
Mm-hmm.
But, there's some people who still believe that it's him. But most likely not, because of the fact that, the whole thing that they said in the last chapter where the Magic Council's like, oh, Gray's in there, and like, God just like, no, I don't care.
Uh-huh.
So that could mean, oh, well, that they were informing him that, that they learned from the spy that Gray was in there, and, God just doesn't care. Or Gray is the spy, and they're just reminding Gajeel that Gray's in there,
Mm-hmm.
their spy. I'm kind of sort of I mean, it would be interesting. It would be interesting if it was Gray, mainly because that would mean we would still have 5 Avatar members to fight in total,
Uh-huh.
as opposed to 4, because then that would mean that Lucy would have to, and one of her celestial spirits would have to tag team 2 members, as opposed to Lucy and one of her celestial spirits doing a 2-on-1 fight.
Right.
Because that's one of the whole reasons behind this new ability of hers, is that she can, add, fight alongside them, but can also fight separately from them.
Mm-hmm.
That's the whole point behind this. So it wouldn't make any sense if every fight she's always fighting it's a 2-on-1 every time with her.
Right.
So.
But yeah, if
I
Gray
believe you
gets
had
one shot, I'm done. I'm done.
It's impossible, because remember, Nakama power and flashbacks
Mm-hmm.
that they conveniently are triggered by people getting punched in the face or the gut or some other area.
Yeah.
Like, oh my god, Natsu lands a blow, a punch on Gray. Oh, he suddenly remembers this one time they were fighting or whatnot, and, not Gray then hits Natsu back, and they remember another time. Like, when I say this arc isn't going to be super long, I mean it's not going to be like the Tartarus arc, and we're going to be spending chapters trying to take out each and every member. Like, I don't expect any of the other Avatar members to be one-shotted. However, having said that, I don't think any of the fights against them are going to be more than a chapter.
Yeah, that's probably true.
So you're going to spend like a chapter taking out each of the other members, and then maybe like all the while, you're going to be getting bits and pieces throughout these chapters of the fight between Natsu and Gray.
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of like makes it seem like, so that way they can claim that the fight lasted for like 4 or 5, 7 chapters, but really it was only the focus of, might only be the focus for like 2 or 3.
Yeah.
I hope it's, like I said, I would say I would hope no more than 10 chapters. I hope. Like.
Yeah, I would hope it wouldn't go past that at all.
Because, like I said at the beginning, throughout the entirety of this, we don't want to spend too much time focusing on trying to recollect everyone, especially since this arc, this first arc, we only got, since technically everything after the time skip up to this point is one arc, we've only gotten, Natsu, Lucy, Happy, Sharla, Wendy, and then we'll get and then we'll be getting probably Gray and Juvia, which is a package deal, because unless we get Gray back, Juvia's not going anywhere,
Uh-huh.
and possibly Gajeel and Panther Lily, possibly.
Mm-hmm.
But it all comes back to that idea of, back when they were trying to get Wendy and Charlotte was that, oh, they moved on with their lives in the past year, so are they willing to come back? Gagio, I see it being something as simple as him wanting to continue his rivalry with Natsu as his reasoning for coming back.
Mm-hmm.
And then he would just like friggin', basically just leave like the punk he is. Like, oh, I don't care. Like the arc ends, and he's like, he just throws off his cloak, the cloak he's wearing, the council cloak, and just walks off as they're like saying, no, you can't leave, you can't leave, and like, just watch me leave, like something like that. But I'm still predicting, people are still predicting that, there's going to be at least a couple of people who aren't going to come back. And so far, the only one I can still see reasonably not coming back is Elfman. Or at least not at first, because it's Fairy Tail. They're all going to come back together. It's just a matter of who's going to claim they're not coming back, and then only to come back much later down the road. And that's Elfman. I mean, just based on the way things ended, we ended off with him in the end of Tartarus. He's going to resist the hardest, unless Mashima decides to make Gray's parallel with Sasuke even more so, and have, instead of Gray joining back with Fairy Tail at the end of this arc, have him run off, and it be basically have part 3 of Fairy Tail basically be the entire, like, almost exactly like Naruto Part 2, where they spend the majority of the time trying to get Gray back, only for him to finally come back in the final arc.
Mm-hmm.
And then have them take down Zeref and Acnologia, and calm End, or allow the good Natsu to take control of End, and then have some like random fight at the end. If Mashima does that, I'm going to like flip shit. Like, no. On all honesty, what I see happening, the thing I want to see happen at the end is basically, here's how I want the final personally would like to see the final chapter happen. Basically, Natsu doing the same thing he always does and challenging Urza and Gildarts to fights. You only see a little bit of scuffling, but you don't actually see their fights. And then, like, in the second half of the chapter, you get a brief, like, look into the future to see how things have turned out. Like, because, out of, like, Fairy Tail shippers are, even I would think, are even more hardcore than the Naruto shippers.
That's a tough statement to make.
Now, yes, you got, mainly because now they are tougher, but being tougher doesn't mean you're more violent. When it comes to the Fairy Tail shippers, there are so many shippings that it's impossible for all the shippings to work, because you have multiple weird, combinations of various pairings.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Naruto, most of the shippings, there were the only 2 shippings that really caused problems was between the who each of the 3 members of Team 7 ended up with.
Right.
Everybody else, nobody gave a fuck. Like, did anybody care that Choji just ended up with some random girl? No. Or the fact that freaking Kiba didn't even look like he got it with anybody. No one cares. Only what they care about is who Sakura, Naruto, and Sasuke ended up with.
Mm-hmm.
And the issues were the two main people that were complaining about the ending was the people who said were the diehard shippers and the diehard shippers. Those were the only those are the only two who gave people an issue. The only shippings that but all the other ships were happy. Were easy to do. But overall, the Naruto fandom and their shippers are far more violent. Easier to please, but much more violent when they're not pleased.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the Fairy Tail shippers, there are so many different combinations that it is nearly impossible. There's going to be much more than 2 shippings that aren't going to be happening. Because first of all, I think if you look in the shippings, Natsu is paired, I think, with like 3 or 4 different people. I think like everybody has at least like 3 anywhere from like 2 to 3 different people that people are saying they could end up with.
Mm-hmm.
Most of them, not all of them. So it's just they're going to be tougher. So in conclusion of my rant, the Fairy Tail is taking so far. It's good that they are taking, that they are not going to make this arc last too long. However, even though it will be disappointing to have something that's been hyped up to be a major threat to be taken out so quickly. However, we do not want to go through this whole thing of, Gray being Sasuke, where they just go through this whole thing of trying to every arc is some taking a new angle on trying to get Gray back, only for him to come back in the end, and then when they show you the glimpse of the future, that they show you who got with who had children, what their children look like if they had any children at this point, and then just piss everyone off because there's just too many shippings.
Mm-hmm.
Which is why I want there to be it's hard to really tell sometimes when it comes to anime manga shippers.
Mm-hmm.
And because when I mean hard to decide is what's worse, not leaving the fandom to argue over the shippings, what shippings are canon, or making certain ships canon and then having them argue over whether or not those were the right ones to do. Because both can end pretty ugly.
Oh yeah.
There's a little more because, like I said, both have equal opportunities to be angry. Like for instance, when the mangaka decides to write pairings at the end, the people whose ships didn't happen are going to be angry, super extra angry because they're butthurt. Whereas the people they don't make pairs by the end, then everyone's just gets raged up because they don't know, and it just gets a heated argument, and there's no winner because you can't just simply say, oh well, this is what that was actually canon, so just end it. No, that which is thankfully not all series are like that, where even though there's shippings, it's not necessarily always necessary to actually give out the pairings at the end. It'd be nice, but that's not always necessary.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we should just leave it at that. I mean, the chapter overall was okay, but unlike Strider here, I don't think it was the worst chapter of the week, just because it didn't piss me off the most.
For me, it was the worst. For me, this chapter was was eh.
It was an okay chapter, but in terms of just things that in the long run piss me off, this chapter didn't piss me off the most this week. In terms of long-term pissing off,
Mm-hmm.
not immediate pissing off. Immediate pissing off, we'll get another issue, but that's another
Okay.
video. So.
All right.